Leaned forward, his face is inches from Catherine's. Listen carefully, sister, he hissed. If you dare to leave me, if you dare to betray me, I will make sure everyone knows your secret. I will expose you for the sinner you are. Catherine's heart sank, her blood running cold. She knew Father Michael's threat was real, and she knew he would stop at nothing to destroy her. Sister Addie and Evie were two Catholic nuns who lived in a hostel called Bethany Manor. The manor was a beautiful old building that served as a residence for the nuns. As members of the Order of St. Mary, Sister Addie and Evie had dedicated their lives to serving God and the community. Their days were filled with prayers, work and services to others. Sister Addie and Evie's hostel were a cozy and simple space with two single beds, a desk and a closet. The room was situated in a quiet corridor with another room facing theirs. The room opposite theirs belonged to Sister Clara and Margaret. Sister Clara was a skilled musician who played the organ during Mass, while Sister Margaret was a talented artist who created beautiful paintings and sculptures. The four sisters often chat and laugh together in the corridor, sharing stories and experiences from their day. The hostel had a warm and welcoming atmosphere, and the sisters felt grateful to be living in such a supportive community. One evening, as the sisters were preparing for bed, Sister Evie turned to Sister Addie and said, I had a lovely conversation with Sister Clara today. She's been teaching me some new hymns on the organ. Sister Addie smiled. That is wonderful, Evie. You have a beautiful singing voice. Just then, Sister Margaret poked her head out of her room. Sisters, I have some exciting news. Mother Superiors have asked me to create a new mural in the chapel. The sisters all congratulated Sister Margaret and asked to see her designs. As they chatted and admired the sketches, the corridor was filled with the warm and joyful sound of their laughter. One day, Mother Superior announced that a new sister would be joining their community. Sister Catherine was her name, and she had just completed her novitiate training. Sister Addie and Evie were excited to meet the new sister and welcomed her to their community. They were also curious to know how Sister Catherine had adjusted to her new life. As it turned out, Sister Catherine was assigned to share a room with Sister Clara and Margaret. The three sisters quickly introduced themselves and began to get to know one another. Sister Catherine was a bit shy at first, but Sister Clara and Margaret quickly put her at ease with her warm smiles and friendly chatter. As the days went by, the three sisters grew closer, sharing stories and laughter together. Sister Catherine was amazed by Sister Clara's and Margaret's talent and enthusiasm, and she felt grateful to be living with such kind and supportive companion. Meanwhile, Sister Addie and Evie were happy to see the new sister settling in so well. They often invited Sister Clara, Margaret, and Catherine to join them for prayers or recreation, and the five sisters would spend hours together, enjoying each other's company. As the community continued to grow and thrive, the sisters felt grateful for the love and support they shared with one another. Sister Clara and Margaret were excited as they prepared for Sunday Mass. They dressed in their habits, their crucifix gleaming in the morning light. Come along, Sister Catherine, Sister Clara called out. We don't want to be late for Mass. Sister Catherine grudgingly emerged from her bed, rubbing her temples. I'm so sorry, sister, she said, her voice weak, but I have a terrible headache. I don't think I can make it to Mass today. Sister Clara and Margaret exchanged a skeptical glance. Perhaps you can bring you some water or aspirin, Sister Margaret suggested, trying to gauge Sister Catherine's reaction. Sister Catherine quickly shook her head. No, sisters, I'll be fine. You go ahead without me. Sister Clara and Margaret reluctantly left Sister Catherine behind. As soon as Sister Clara and Margaret left the room, Sister Catherine's demeanor changed. She lay down on her bed, her eyes gleaming with a secret excitement. She reached into her bag and pulled out a doll. Sister Catherine lay on the bed as she secretly satisfied her urge. As the minutes tickled by, Sister Catherine's whisper grew louder, her words indistinguishable. Her body began to tremble, her hands clutching the door tightly. Suddenly, Sister Catherine's eyes snapped shut and she let out a soft moan. Her body relaxed and she lay there, motionless, the door still clutched in her hand. The room was silent except for the sound of Sister Catherine's ragged breathing. It was as if she had escaped into a secret world, one where she could indulge her desires without fear of judgment. But as the silence stretched out, Sister Catherine's eyes slowly opened, and she gazed up at the ceiling. A look of guilt and shame etched on her face. Meanwhile, Brother Michael, the head of the administration of the non-community, was a tall, imposing figure with piercing eyes that seemed to see through right everyone. He had a commanding presence, and the sisters all looked to him with a mixture of reverence and fear. After morning mass and prayers, Father Michael sent one of the younger sisters to summon Sister Margaret to his office. Sister Margaret felt a flutter on her chest as she made her way to Father Michael's office. She wondered what she had done wrong, or if Father Michael seemed needing her assistance with something. Father Michael, who is the youngest of all the priests, he is the son of Bishop David Matthew, and he is the last priest to be ordained into St. Mary's Church. As she entered the office, Father Michael looked up from the papers on his desk and smiled. "Ah, Sister Margaret, thank you for coming. I have a special task in mind for you." Sister Margaret's curiosity was piqued. What could Father Michael have in store for her? He walked up to her and whispered, "I want to make you the prioress of all the sisters. That is if you are willing to give in," he said, trying to hold her. But she stepped back. "What are you talking about, Father Michael?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Father Michael's eye gleamed with a sinister intensity. "I'm talking about power, Sister Margaret, and pleasure. You could have it all, right here, right now." Sister Margaret felt a wave of disgust wash over her. "You are a man of God, Father Michael. How can you ever suggest such a thing?" Father Michael's smile grew wider. "God has nothing to do with this, Sister Margaret. This is about me and you, and we can offer each other." Sister Margaret knew that she had to get out of there. Fast, she turned to leave, but Father Michael's words stopped her. "Think about it, Sister Margaret. You could be the leader of all the women here. You could have all the powers and privilege you have ever dreamed of." Sister Margaret felt a surge of anger and determination. She turned the offer down and threatened to report him. Michael's smile twisted in a menacing glare. "Don't ever think about reporting me to anyone, Sister Margaret," he sneered. "No one will believe you. I am a respected leader in the community, and you are just a simple nun. Your word against mine? I think not." Sister Margaret felt a chill down her spine. She knew that Father Michael's words were not just a threat, but a statement of fact. He had a reputation of being ruthless and cunning, and she had no doubt that he would stop at nothing to protect himself. Despite her fear, Sister Margaret stood tall, her eyes locked on Father Michael's own. "I'm not afraid of you," she lied, trying to keep her voice steady. Father Michael laughed, a cold, meatless sound. "We will see about that," he said, his eyes glinting with malice. She shut the door and left. As the sisters closed up the church for the day, Sister Margaret pulled Sister Clara and Sister Evie aside, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need to tell you something," she said, her eyes scanning the surrounding area to make sure no one was listening. Something happened with Father Michael. Sister Clara and Sister Evie exchanged a curious glance, and Sister Margaret took a deep breath before launching into the story. She told them everything, the way Father Michael had looked at her, the things he had said, and the threats he had made. As she spoke, her friends' faces grew increasingly shocked and outraged. "Oh, Margaret, I'm so sorry," Sister Clara said, her voice full of empathy. "We had no idea." Sister Evie's face was set in a determined expression. "We need to tell Mother Superior about this," she said. "Father Michael can't be allowed to get away with this behavior." Sister Margaret nodded in agreement, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. She was no longer alone in this, and with her friends by her side, she felt like she would finally take action. As the sisters walked to the hostel, the tension and seriousness of their previous conversation slowly gave way to laughter and chatter. They were all smiling and joking, discussing the morning sermon and sharing their thoughts on the reading. "I love the way Father John emphasized the importance of compassion," Sister Clara said, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "Yes, and the way he linked it to our daily lives was so inspiring," Sister Evie added. Sister Margaret nodded in agreement, feeling grateful for the sense of camaraderie and the shared purpose that filled her heart. The three sisters smiled at each other, looking forward to a warm and welcoming lunch together. The next morning, Mother Superior smiled warmly as she announced the selection. "For the evangelical team, I have chosen Sister Margaret, Sister Catherine, and Sister Evie. You'll be visiting the nearby villages to spread the word of God." Sister Margaret, Sister Catherine, and Sister Evie exchanged excited glances, eager to embark on their mission. Meanwhile, Sister Clara and Addie were choosing to visit the local orphanage. You'll be leading prayers and distributing food items to the children, Mother Superior explained. As the sisters nodded, accepting their assignment, Mother Superior offered words of encouragement. Remember, my dear sisters, that our work is not just about serving others, but also about spreading love and kindness. Mother Superior's next announcement caught the sisters off guard. And now, I would like to inform you that Father Michael will be leading the evangelism team to the villages, and the prioress Joy will be in charge. Sister Margaret's eye widened in alarm as she exchanged worried glances with Sister Catherine and Sister Evie. Priest Michael's behavior towards Sister Margaret had left a bad taste in her mouth, and she couldn't imagine why Mother Superior would put him in charge of their team. Meanwhile, Mother Superior continued, and I will be leading the team to the orphanage alongside with Sister Clara and Addie. Sister Margaret felt a surge of disappointment and concern. Why had Mother Superior made this decision? As the morning prayers came to a close, the sisters quietly filed out of the chapel and made their way to their rooms. The soft murmur of conversation and the rustling of habits filled the corridor as sisters prepared for the day ahead. Sister Margaret, Sister Catherine, and Sister Evie gathered in their room, discussing their plan for evangelism trip. We should focus on spreading the message of love and compassion, Sister Evie said, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. Meanwhile, Sister Clara and Addie were in their room preparing for their visit to the orphanage. I'm so excited to see the children's faces lit up when we arrive, Sister Clara said, smiling. As the sisters continued their preparation, they took a moment to reflect on their mission and the opportunities they would have served to others. As the team arrived at the village, they were warmly welcomed by the locals. Sister Flores and the team were shown to a simple but clean room where they could settle in and rest before beginning their evangelism work. After freshening up, the team set out into the village, eager to share the message of God's love with the people. They walked through the dusty streets, greeting villagers and inviting them to hear their messages. Sister Margaret, Sister Catherine, and Sister Evie worked together, chatting with the villagers and handing out pamphlets. Father Michael walked ahead, his eyes scanning the crowd as he searched for potential converts. As they walked, the team came across a group of children playing on the street. Sister Catherine, who loved children, immediately knelt down and began playing with them, sharing stories and laughter. The villagers watched in amazement as sisters and Brother Michael shared their message of love and hope. Some were skeptical at first, but as they listened to the teens' word, they began to see the sincerity and compassion in their eyes. As the sun began to set, the team made their way back to their accommodations, exhausted but fulfilled after a day of evangelism work. They had shared their messages with countless villagers, and while some had been receptive, others had been more skeptical. Sister Margaret, Sister Catherine, and Sister Evie trudged wearily to their room, dropping their bags and collapsing on their bed. I am so tired, Sister Catherine sighed, rubbing her feet. Sister Margaret nodded sympathetically. It has been a long day, but it was worth it. Don't you think so? Sister Evie smiled, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. Definitely, I feel like we really made a connection with some of the villagers. The girls chatted. At the orphanage, Sister Clara and Addie were having a wonderful time with the children. They had spent the morning cooking and preparing food, and now they were distributing it to the eager youngsters. As they ate, the sisters sang and danced with the children, sharing the word of God through music and laughter. The children's faces lit up with joy, and they clapped and cheered along with the sisters. Sister Clara smiled warmly as she handed out plates of food. You are so special and loved by God, she told the children. Sister Addie nodded in agreement. And we are so grateful to be able to share this time with you. The children chatted excitedly among themselves, clearly enjoying the sisters' company. As the afternoon wore on, the sisters led the children in prayers and song, feeling grateful for the opportunity to serve. As the day drew to a close, Sister Clara and Addie said their goodbye to the children and orphanage staff. They were tired but happy, feeling fulfilled after a day of serving others. As they walked back to their room, Sister Clara turned to Sister Addie with a smile. That was such a wonderful day, she said. I'm so grateful we could spend time with those precious children. Sister Addie nodded in agreement. Me too, Sister Clara. It's days like this that remind me of why I became a nun in the first place. The two sisters continued to chat and reflect on their way as they settled into their room, ready to rest and prepare for another day of service. As the sisters settled in for the night, Sister Catherine suddenly felt overwhelmed. She tried to calm herself, but her emotions got the better of her. Quietly, she got up from her bed and ran to the back of the room, hiding in a corner. As Sister Catherine carefully watched to make sure no one was looking, she slowly reached into the folds of her dress and pulled out a small doll she had hidden there earlier, not wanting others to see what she's doing. As Sister Catherine sat on the floor, her back against the wall, she began to gently knock the door on her. The motion was soothing, and she felt her tension and satisfaction coming through. As Sister Catherine continued to use the door, she became more and more relaxed, letting out soft, gentle moans. She was completely unaware of her surroundings, lost in her own little world. But she wasn't alone. Father Michael stood in the shadows, watching her with an intense gaze. His eyes narrowed, his face expressionless. Sister Catherine remained oblivious to his presence, too caught up in her own world and feelings. But Father Michael's watching her, her eyes fixed on her with an unnerving intensity. Father Michael took another step towards her and muttered, "What is going on here?" Father Michael's voice was low and even, but it sent a joy through Sister Catherine. She was shocked, her eyes wide with fear, as she tried to process what was happening. "What do you mean, Father?" Sister Catherine stammered, trying to hide the door behind her. Father Michael's eyes narrowed, his gaze fixed on the door. "I think you know exactly what I'm talking about, sister," he said, his voice firm but controlled. Sister Catherine's face flushed with embarrassment and fear. She knew she had been caught, and she didn't know how to explain herself. Sister Catherine's eyes welled up with tears as she begged Father Michael for mercy. "Please, Father, don't tell anyone about this," she implored, her voice shaking with fear. "I will do anything, just please don't dismiss me from the convent." Father Michael's eyes seemed to bore into Sister Catherine's soul as he spoke. "I can keep your secret, sister," he said, his voice low and measured. "But there is one condition." Sister Catherine's heart skipped a beat as she waited for him to continue. "What condition?" she stammered. Father Michael's gaze didn't waver. "You must come to my chambers every evening to play with me," he said, but his voice was hinting at something more. "I want to help you overcome your attachment to this door and focus on your spiritual journey." Sister Catherine felt a shiver run down her spine as she hesitated, unsure of what to do. Sister Catherine's eyes widened in shock as Father Michael's word hung in the air. "I want you to be my mistress," he repeated, his voice low and husky. Sister Catherine felt like she had been punched in the gut. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Father Michael, I don't know what to say," she stammered. Father Michael's eyes seemed to burn with intensity as he took a closer step towards her. "I have seen the way you move, the way you smile, and I want you." Sister Catherine's eyes widened in alarm as Father Michael's word sent chill down her spine. "What are you doing with the door? It is against our doctrine, sister," he said, his voice dripping with hypocrisy. "I will give you time to think about my proposal. Perhaps you will see things differently after some reflection." With that, Father Michael turned and left Sister Catherine alone, her mind reeling with confusion and fear. Sister Catherine felt like she was in a daze as she walked back to her room. She couldn't shake off the feeling of unease and confusion that settled in her stomach. Father Michael's proposal had left her reeling, and she didn't know what to do. As she entered her room, she closed the door behind her and leaned against it, trying to process her thoughts. She felt trapped and scared, unsure of what the future held. The next day, Sister Catherine and the other sisters, along with Father Michael, set out for their second day of evangelism. Sister Catherine tried to push aside the event of the previous day, focusing on the task at hand. As they walked through the village, Father Michael gave his usual enthusiastic speeches, while the sisters handed out pamphlets and spoke with the villagers. Sister Catherine went through the motion, but her heart wasn't in it. She couldn't shake out the feeling that Father Michael's eyes were on her, watching her every move. She felt like she was walking on eggshell, never knowing what he might bring up his proposal again. He walked closer to her. Father Michael's voice was low and menacing as he moved closer to Sister Catherine. "I'll be waiting for you tonight," he whispered, his breath hot against her ear. "Don't forget to show up." Sister Catherine's heart skipped a beat as she felt a chill run down her spine. She tried to step back, but Father Michael's grip on her held her in place. Before she could react, Father Michael released her arms and moved to the front of the group. His expression transformed into a bright, enthusiastic smile. "Shall we continue our mission?" he called out to the group, his voice booming through the village. Sister Catherine felt like she was going to be sick. She knew she had to get away from Father Michael, but she didn't know how. At night fell, Sister Catherine secretly made her way to Father Michael's quarter, her heart heavy with dread. She had tried to avoid this moment all day, but she knew she couldn't put it off forever. As she approached the door, she could feel her palms growing sweaty. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves, and knocked softly on the door. Father Michael's voice came out from inside. "Enter!" Sister Catherine pushed open the door and stepped inside, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. Father Michael sat in a chair, his eyes fixed on her. Father Michael's voice was low and smooth as he moved closer to Sister Catherine. "So you finally came," he said, his eyes gleaming with a knowing light. "Nice one." Sister Catherine felt a shiver run down her spine as Father Michael's words sent a wave of unease through her. She tried to step back, but her feet seemed rooted to the spot. He moved closer to her and took her hands. He led her to the toilet and gently pulled her dress. Catherine was standing like a load. She couldn't push him away. She knew she had to give in to his desires. As Father Michael's hands slowly made way to her body, she closed her eyes, his hands closing her mouth as he satisfied his desires. Without a second thought, when he was done, he reminded her, "Remember our little secret and keep to your promise." Sister Catherine nodded and left her room. The next morning, Sister Catherine and the other sisters quietly gathered their belongings and prepared to leave for their hostels. The atmosphere was somber and no one spoke much. Sister Catherine's eyes were sunken and her face was pale. She looked like she hadn't slept all night. The other sisters noticed her demeanor but didn't ask any question. As they walked to their hostels, Sister Catherine couldn't shake off the feelings of shame and guilt that weighed heavily on her heart. She felt like she had lost herself, and she didn't know how to get back. The sisters gathered in the hostel's common room, exchanging warm smiles and greetings. Sister Catherine tried to join in, but her heart wasn't in it. Sister Mary, a kind-hearted and observant nun, noticed Sister Catherine's subdued demeanor. "Catherine, is everything okay?" she asked, concern etched on her face. Sister Catherine forced a weak smile. "Yes, I'm fine, just a bit tired." The other sister nodded sympathetically. They all left for their various activities. As the night wore on, Sister Catherine found herself drawn to Sister Clara, who was sitting on the bed reading a book. Catherine had always admired Clara's kindness and intelligence and beauty. She moved closer to Clara on the bed, feeling a sense of comfort and ease in her presence. Clara looked up from her book and smiled. "Hey, Catherine, what's up?" Catherine's heart skipped a beat as she met Clara's gaze. She felt a flutter in her chest and her pulse quickened. She realized that her feelings for Clara went beyond admiration and respect. "I am fine, just tired," she said. "Okay, let me go and take a shower," Sister Clara said. "I will join you too, let's go," Sister Catherine said. As Clara got to the shower, Sister Catherine followed her to the bathroom. Her heart racing with anticipation, Clara turned on the water and began to undress. Unaware of Catherine's gaze, Catherine's eyes locked into Clara's reflection in the mirror, and she felt her breath catch. She had never seen Clara in such a vulnerable state before. Sister Catherine couldn't help but be drawn to Clara's beauty. She found herself observing Clara's curve, her skin, her vibrant hair. Her confidence and kindness only added to her allure. As Catherine stood there, lost in her thought, Clara began to hum a gentle tune. The sound sent shivers down Catherine's spine, and she felt her heart beat faster. Clara turned to Catherine, a hint of amusement in her eyes. "Aren't you going to take your bath?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Catherine's face flushed as she realized she had been standing there, lost in thought. "I wish," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I was just thinking about something. Sorry." Clara's expression softened, and she reached out to gently touch Catherine's arm. "It's okay," she said, her voice low and soothing. "We all need moments to ourselves sometimes." Catherine couldn't shake off the image of Clara's captivating smile and striking features. Her mind wandered, envisioning a future where Clara was more than just a fellow sister. She pictured Clara's lips, soft and inviting, and imagined the gentle touch of her skin. Catherine's heart skipped a beat as she envisioned her hands intertwined, their eyes locked in a loving gaze. Sister Clara finished her bath, dried herself off, and wrapped a towel around her body. She smiled warmly at Catherine, oblivious to the turmoil brewing inside her. Your turn, Clara said, nodding towards her shower. I will get dressed in the room. Catherine nodded, still lost in her thought. Clara slipped out of the bedroom, leaving Catherine alone with her reflection. As night fell, Sister Catherine found herself drawn to Sister Clara's side. She lay close to Clara, feeling the warmth of her body. Catherine's hand drifted towards Clara, her fingers brushing against Clara's arm. Clara stirred but didn't wake. Catherine's touch became more deliberate, her hand caressing Clara's skin. She felt a rush of excitement, mixed with guilt. Sister Clara's eyes fluttered open, and she quickly removed her hand. She turned to Catherine, her expression a mixture of surprise and concern. What is going on, Catherine? Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Catherine's hand froze, and she looked up into Clara's eyes, her own filled with a mixture of emotions. Catherine quickly withdrew her hands, trying to brush off the moment. I was just checking whether you are awake, she stammered, attempting to sound nonchalantly. Clara's eye narrowed slightly, her gaze piercing. At midnight, she asked, her tone skeptical. Catherine's face flushed, and she looked away, avoiding Clara's gaze. I couldn't sleep, she muttered. Clara's expression softened, and she nodded. Okay, Catherine. Try to get some rest. She turned over, her back to Catherine. Catherine let out a sigh of relief, feeling a mixture of emotions, guilt and shame, and a hint of disappointment. She lay down, trying to calm her racing thoughts. As they drifted off to sleep, the tension between them was palpable. The next morning, Sister Catherine and Sister Clara, Sister Margaret, and others woke up early, ready to start their day with morning mass. They quickly got dressed in their habits and headed to church. As they walked, the crisp morning air filled their lungs, and the sound of birds chirping accompanied them. The atmosphere was peaceful, a stark contrast to the tension between them the night before. They took their places in the pew, joining the other sisters for mass. The familiar rituals and prayers brought a sense of comfort and calm. As the mass progressed, Sister Catherine's attention wandered. She couldn't help but steal glances at Sister Clara, who sat a few pews ahead. Clara's profile was serene, her eyes closed in devotion. Catherine's eyes lingered on Clara's gentle features, her mind drifting to the previous night's event. She felt a flutter in her chest, a mixture of emotion she couldn't quite untangle. The priest's voice rose and fell, but Catherine didn't register the word. Her focus was on Clara, her heart pounding in her chest. As the mass came to a close, Sister Catherine and other nuns began to file out of the church. But before Catherine could join the others, a young nun approached her. Sister Catherine, Father Michael wishes to see you in his office, the nun said softly. Catherine's heart skipped a beat. What could Father Michael want with her? The young nun hesitated before adding, and Sister Margaret too. Catherine exchanged a curious glance with Sister Margaret, who raised an eyebrow. As they entered Father Michael's office, he looked up from the papers on his desk. Ah, sisters, he said, his voice firm but polite. Please, Sister Catherine, would you mind waiting outside for a moment? He asked, his eyes narrowing slightly. Sister Margaret raised an eyebrow but remained silent. Catherine's heart skipped a beat as she felt a shiver run down her spine. What did Father Michael want with Margaret? Father Michael's gaze locked into Sister Margaret's eyes, her gaze intensely looking at him also. He moved closer, his voice taking on a conspiratory tone. Sister Margaret, are you ready to take my request? He asked, his words dripping with an air of secrecy. No, sir, Margaret responded. Father Michael's smile faltered, his eyes widening in surprise. No, he repeated, his voice tingled with incredulity. Sister Margaret stood firm, her jaw set. I don't want to be paralyzed, Father, she stated, her voice clear and resolute. Father Michael's face darkened, his expression disapproving. But Sister Margaret, this is a great honor, he pressed on, his tone persuasive. Margaret's resolve remained unwavering. I'm sorry, Father. My final answer is no. Father Margaret's eyes gleamed with an unsettling intensity. As he moved closer to Sister Margaret, his voice dropped in a low, husky whisper. Okay, let's say you don't want to progress, but I want you to myself, he murmured, his breathing brushed against Margaret's ear. Margaret's eyes widened in alarm, her heart racing. She tried to step back, but Father Michael's hand shot up, grasping her wrist. Sister Margaret's eyes blazed with determination as she boldly met Father Michael's gaze. Her voice rang out clear and firm. I will never ever be your mistress, to you or anyone, she declared, her words dripping with conviction. Father Michael's eyes darkening, his eyes flashing with anger. He tightened his grip on Margaret's wrist, his fingers digging into her skin. Father Michael's face twisted in a menacing scroll. If you don't accept my request, you will regret knowing me. He is, his voice dripping with malice. Sister Margaret's heart skipped a beat, fear creeping up her spine. She tried to step back, but Father Michael's grip on her wrist remained unyielding. You won't dare harm me, Margaret said, trying to keep her voice steady. Father Michael's laughter sent shivers down her spine. You will be surprised what I can do, he sneered. Sister Margaret's determination and fear gave her the strength to finally break free from Father Michael's grip. She wrenched her wrist away, rubbing the tender skin. With a fierce glint in her eyes, Margaret turned and swiftly exited the office, leaving Father Michael's menacing presence behind. As she stepped into the corridor, the cool air enveloped her, calming her racing heart. She took a breath, her mind reeling with the event that just transpired, and she kept on walking. Sister Catherine's eyes widened with concern as she saw Sister Margaret hurrying down the corridor, her face pale and frightened. Is everything okay with you? Catherine asked. Catherine, everything is fine, Margaret replied hastily, forcing a weak smile before quickly disappearing around the corner. Catherine's brow furrowed, her mind racing with worry. She hesitated for a moment before taking a deep breath and entering Father Michael's office. Ah, Sister Catherine, Father Michael said, his voice smooth as silk. Please come on in. Catherine's eyes locked into his, searching for any sign of what has transpired between him and Margaret. But Father Michael's expression was impassive, revealing nothing. Are you sleeping with Margaret? She asked. Father Michael's eyes widened in shock, his face pale. What are you talking about, Sister Catherine? He stammered. Catherine's eyes blazed with determination. I saw the way Margaret looked when she left your office. I know something is going on.